There's no question about it. The rap journalist Humberto Gonzalez is very upset by David Zaslav's shelving and cancellation of Batgirl. Indeed, it's a very, very controversial decision, and a decision that could have been done in a much neater and tidier way. For example, the two directors of Batgirl weren't even told by Zaslav himself that the movie was being shelved. They didn't know until we knew, which is absolutely disgusting and isn't the right way to deal with these things. Absolutely not. And, you know, we know that the test screening for Batgirl, the one that it had, you know, Walter Hamada asked the test audience, was this suitable to be watched in a theatre? They said no. This was just fit to be like a CW type of pilot. So clearly the film needed more work. So Zaslav could have given the directors a further investment to make a better movie. He didn't. He just shelved the movie and he got a tax write-off. I think you have to look at it and say the motivation for shelving Batgirl isn't to protect the DC brand, it was to get the tax write-off. I'm not bothered by the cancellation of Batgirl as a DC fan. I want to see Batgirl in her own movie. I want her to be a part of the DC Extended Universe. I think Leslie Grace deserves better. I think the directors deserve better. It certainly wasn't handled very well. And there was a way of making this film better, but it's clear that Warner Brothers Discovery are in a lot of debt, and they looked at the whole of the DC slate going forward, and they said, right, what movie can we get away with getting rid of and getting a tax write-off from? Let's do Batgirl. So I think there are some truths about the lack of quality of Batgirl, and he claims he wanted it to be a theatrical movie instead of an HBO Max movie. He doesn't want to release too much DC content going forward on HBO Max, and that's clear. And we can see from the decisions at Netflix, Prime, Disney Plus, that, you know, streaming isn't the valuable commodity we all thought it was. And, you know, we all thought streaming was the future, and clearly, for now, theatrical will remain the future. We've seen what's happening with Armor Wars. It was going to be a Disney Plus show. It's now going to be run through the theatrical system. The Blade movie has lost its director. They're rewriting the entire script and starting again. So these things can be done amicably. So even though Humberto Gonzalez triggers me, I make fun of him on Twitter. I make fun of this article. His article has triggered me. He's using the full force of his rap publication to go after David Zaslav, and a lot of the stuff he's saying isn't exactly true. We're going to read this article and what's been said by Gonzalez. He's even got a source in this article. We're going to do this via the direct because unfortunately the rap make you pay a subscription, and I ain't doing that for any publication. These things should be free, like YouTube channels are free, right? You guys shouldn't have to pay to know stuff. So we're going to get into this article very, very shortly. But, you know, I understand why Humberto Gonzalez is upset. He's Latinx. Leslie Grace is Latinx. It's not a good look. There's no question about that. There are other ways to handle the Batgirl situation. As I say, it does look like they were looking to make some money back from this film. How Warner Brothers CEO is restricting the future DC superhero movies. I just want to talk about that quickly, by the way. Yes, for now he's restricting DC movies because he's not allowing anything to be greenlit until he finds a president of the newly formed DC studios. Before, it was Toby Emmerich who was running really DC films. He did have a DC Films president in Walter Hamada who had a plan. It was his plan. But final word and say-so always was from Toby Emmerich at WB Pictures. He didn't have the freedom to do what he wanted. And what Zaslav is trying to create here, an independent studios for DC, where there's a team and there's a leader, there's a supremo like Kevin Feige, and they can make the decisions free from any studio interference. This is a really, really good idea. So Gonzalez can try and put a negative spin on that, but I don't think there's anything negative about that. The situation over at Warner Brothers has been quite messy ever since Discovery officially took over and David Zaslav became the new CEO. So Warner Brothers Discovery is in a lot of debt because of the merger, the way Warner Media ran the show and AT&T ran the show. It's not David Zaslav's fault. He's just trying to clean up a mess the best he can. One of his first moves in the position was a decision that astonished everyone. He took Batgirl, which was nearly finished, and scrapped it for tax credits. And I think that is the motivation. He talks about protecting the DC brand, but they're in so much debt, I think they had to take a DC movie and cancel one of them. And it's a shame, because a lot of hard work has been put into that movie. But also, we must remember that I think that Zaslav has cancelled Walter Hamada's multiverse strategy, and the Batgirl movie was really the first time we were going to see the new timeline in action in a DC Extended Universe movie. So I think there are multiple reasons why this movie's been scrapped, but again, they could have reworked this movie. They didn't have to cancel it. To make matters even worse, he then started to do the same thing to existing projects on HBO Max, completely nixing them from the platform. In some cases, that meant making seasons of complete shows impossible to watch again. While Zaslav and his crew have announced a 10-year plan for their DCEU, they have not yet shown any promising signs that those will ever come to fruition. Now, this segment is absolute bullshit. Zaslav's only been here for 5 minutes. He only literally announced this about a month ago about the 10-year plan. We've got to give the guy a chance to implement his changes. You can't just wave a wand. You can't just say, izzy wizzy, let's get busy, da 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 da, and expect the man to come up with a 10-year plan. This is going to take time. So that's bullshit. In fact, they're still looking for their own Kevin Feige, who is the renowned president of Marvel Studios. Sadly, it looks like things won't be getting any easier for the DCEU's future, thanks to the CEO's power and micromanaging restrictions. Right, the micromanaging restrictions are a good idea until he gets a trusted person to run DC Studios and DC Films. This is the way it's got to be. And again, this isn't a negative. In a report from The Wrap, which can also be seen on Reddit, some new details behind the scenes of Warner Brothers leadership have been revealed, and they certainly don't paint the best picture of how the DCEU is going to be handled. Well, to be honest with you, they don't know how the DCEU is going to be handled. It's basically putting negative things out there and trying to make you think badly of David Zaslav. And some people are falling for this propaganda. As I say, I agree in some elements with Humberto Gonzalez about what happened with Batgirl, but it's something that happened. We have to get over it. It's not a good look. The way it was handled was badly, but there were many reasons why the movie was cancelled. There is some good news, however. Until David Zaslav finds his own Kevin Feige, president of Marvel Studios, CEOs Mike DeLuca and Pam Abby are set to run the DC side of everything. Why is this good? Well, they're not really running DC at the moment. I think potentially Mike DeLuca could be the one who ends up running DC Studios. He's been involved with other superhero movies in general, not just DC. I think he was involved with the Blade movies as well. So that's a good sign. So he would do a really good job. Basically, for now, nothing's going to be green lit until they find the person they need to run DC Studios. Well, the two both have experience in the arena. DeLuca specifically has previously worked on the 1998 Blade movie and had even tried to get Iron Man made before Marvel Studios brought its first film in 2008. Given the two's history, apparently many insiders are wondering why Zaslav needs to find this mythical new leader at all when he has everything he needs under his nose. Well, let me explain to you why. Why Abby and DeLuca can't run it while they're running WB Pictures. That was the old plan, and it didn't work. That was the way they used to run things. That's why we got Justice League. That's why half an hour of BVS was cut out. Zaslav doesn't want studio interference. He wants DC Studios to be an independent studio. This is a good thing, everyone. Again, this is bullshit. An anonymous producer commented, an anonymous producer, I love this, it probably is Toby Emmerich who's a bit salty. DeLuca knows comics, he knows films, they already have what they need. only if DeLuca runs DC Studios himself. We don't want any studio interference, that's the point. The outlet noted that despite DeLuca and Adby's position and experience, they only have the authority to greenlight projects which budgets under 35 million. Right, so how many movies do you know that cost under 35 million? Fucking none. What this actually means is that DeLuca and Adby are running WB Pictures, but they have no control over DC live action. And nothing's going to be ratified or greenlit until Zaslav finds the best person for the job. This is a very good way of doing things, and I agree with this. Again, this isn't a negative. This would get in the way of them making any substantial progress in reshaping the DCEU's future without being directly given permission from Zaslav. Again, that's a good thing. Zaslav's being careful here. This is a good thing. We don't want to give WB Pictures free rein to make decisions. We've seen what that meant in previous times for the DC Extended Universe. Again, unless you don't understand what's gone on in the past, if you don't get it, and clearly Gonzalez and his insider don't really get it and don't want to get it, they're overly focused on what happened with Batgirl. When it comes to why Feige is so successful, one of the key factors is the unprecedented amount of autonomy given to him by Disney in both the creative and business field. Let me ask you a question. How much freedom has Kevin Feige had since Phase 4 started? You can tell that Phase 4 has been interfered with by Bob Chapek and Disney. Why are the first 3 phases so good and the 4th phase so bad? Studio interference. This is something that didn't happen under Alan Horn and Bob Iger. Anyone hired for the equivalent role for DC projects will also certainly face far more constraints, at least starting out. I don't believe this for 1 minute, that Zaslav is going to micromanage the new DC Studios president. As I say here, maybe at the beginning when the person's feeling their feet. And again, that's okay and that's understandable. But anyone hired for the DC role is likely to face many more constraints, both creatively and financially, at least until they can establish a track record for success. And again, it's natural for a new person running a studio to face these constraints, and the studio is debt-ridden as well, so they have to be careful with what they green light. They're going to want sure things. Again, that's okay. One anonymous producer made it clear that there is no other Feige elaborating how Warner will never give autonomy like to one person like Disney has given the head of Marvel Studios. What will the DCEU landscape end up looking like? To start off, Warner Brothers should just admit to itself that they're never going to find a Kevin Feige. He's one-of-a-kind type of person, and his success will never be replicated by someone actively trying to do so. This is a defeatist attitude, isn't it? Saying we'll never find a Kevin Feige or a capable DC Studios president that can do what Kevin's done for Marvel. That's defeatist. Of course there's people capable of doing what Feige has done. What Feige has done is not that fucking complicated. One studio, all the projects are connected. Just make sure the continuity is right and you're golden. It's not that difficult, really, if you think about it. Anyway. For WB to survive and thrive with the DC Comics properties, it's going to have to find its own system. Part 1 would be to take away some of the absolute power that Zaslav has. I disagree. He's the CEO. He's the troubleshooter, the problem solver. This is the guy who's going to solve these problems. He's the one that made Discovery Plus such a success. And Discovery is the envy of similar companies around the world. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's a very good business person and sharing it with those trying to get the DCEU slate up and running. They also need someone familiar with the source material, obviously, not to mention passionate about it, obviously. Given Mike DeLuca and Pam Adby's history, it does seem like they're the obvious choice to take that leading DC Comics spot for good. The only way I would be happy with that if they're not running WB Pictures as well. They can't do both. There's no question about that. And, Humberto Gonzalez should at least admit that, but he won't. All they really need is a CEO with more experience and one who doesn't make bafflingly bad decisions that will turn off any and all talent from working with them in the future. Always a good starting point. So, there's the article. Now, Humberto Gonzalez had a few more excerpts to it, but I think that's the full thing they were trying to say. This is what they were trying to say in the article. That basically, look, Humberto Gonzalez is going after David Zaslav because David Zaslav shelved Batgirl. And I've already spoken, and I've been very balanced about this, even though I don't really care about the Batgirl cancellation. It's not the end of the world. But I do agree that Batgirl is one of the most popular characters in the pantheon of DC comic books. There's no question about that. And she deserves to be part of the DC Extended Universe. Facts. And I hope one day in the future that will actually happen. But these things they accuse Zaslav of are actually good, positive steps. He is micromanaging at the moment until he finds the right person for the job. Now, he's already greenlit the Batman sequel, the Joker sequel, and we're getting Keanu Reeves to return in a Constantine movie. And it was his idea to give Sandman over to Netflix, which made Neil Gaiman really, really happy. I was up early this morning watching the first 5 episodes. That's a great DC show and better than any Disney Plus. They talk about fate, better than any Disney Plus Marvel show. And it's got the DC brand on it. Brilliant. You should check it out. So Zaslav has a good idea how to do things. He wants an independent DC studio that makes their own decisions with their own president and their own team. He's doing the right thing. Shelving Batgirl the way he did was the wrong thing. No question about it. But I'm not going to judge him over that situation. He wanted the tax write-off. The problem with Batgirl as well, it had Michael Keaton in it. It was the new timeline. Clearly Zaslav doesn't want to continue with the new timeline. Now, I'm sure Humberto Gonzalez will continue his one-man mission to destroy David Zaslav, but his mission is futile. No matter how much people try, my excitement for Black Adam will not be diminished. So hands up. Who's listened to the Black Adam theme music? Yes, they've released some music from the Black Adam movie, and it's great. As usual, certain people, not mentioning any names, are trying to say it's not very good and it sounds generic. It didn't sound generic to me. It sounded like BVS levels. It sounded like Man of Steel, Idea of Hope levels. It was really, really good. And I'm looking forward to listening to the rest of the soundtrack. I am, as you know, I am so excited to see the theatrical version of this movie. I'm excited for all of you to see this movie so we can be excited about it. So we do have a bit of a domestic box office update. Now, Variety are actually claiming that the full domestic box office will be about 335 million. Now, this is very good and not too far away from the Batman's domestic run either. But it's very hard to project a complete domestic box office throughout a film's run. You can easily project through the advanced ticket sales the opening domestic weekend, but you can't really be projecting the full domestic box office run because there's so many variables here. Because will it get lots of rewatchability if people like it? It may do, it may not do. And that will be the kind of situation that kind of sees what kind of box office domestically this film does. But even though 335 million for a complete domestic box office run is very good. And then it all depends how it does internationally and globally. But with a kind of run like that, you could be looking at least, 800 million, 700 million. But projections are projections. It could do much better than that or much worse. So I'm not going to get kind of excited or negative about this. I think that if it does finish on a 335 million domestic run, that's very good. And WB will be very, very happy about that. We've seen big projections before. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, Justice League, and it didn't work out. In fact, the first Aquaman movie, they were saying wasn't going to do very well. It ended up making over $1 billion in the global box office. What I see from people's reactions to the trailers and the Fandango interview. I saw the Fandango interview with The Rock and his other cast members, including Pierce Brosnan, who's a classy guy, by the way. I liked it. The banter between the actors, it was very laid back, and I love it. And I didn't know that Quintessa Swindell is actually a transgender actor, because you wouldn't think it. I mean, and I don't have any issue with that situation, but I was kind of surprised because she just looks like a girl, and I think that's great. And of course, I support her in the role, and it's great for her, and I think Quintessa is great in the movie. I think everyone in this movie was perfect, was born to play these roles. So I'm hugely hyped for this movie. I think it's going to be successful. So anyone like Humberto Gonzalez or certain fandoms out there trying to put a negative spin on Black Adam will not touch me and won't affect me. This is my vow to every single DC fan who watches, subscribes, and likes this channel. The Black Adam marketing campaign, and right up to the release of the movie and while it's run in movie theatres, I'm going to be completely positive and excited and hyped for the future of the DC Extended Universe, because I think people are going to love this film, and it sets up an exciting future for the DCEU. It's got so many cameos and Easter eggs in this film from the entire DC Extended Universe. It's so exciting, and I'm very happy with what David Zaslav's doing. I think he's making the right decision, so no one is going to kill my enthusiasm for the future of DC and for the Black Adam movie. This has been Movies TV Mad with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wife. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you in the next video. Until we see each other again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.